There is a reason why, despite the passing of time, despite the silence, and despite the decisions you have already made, that person still lingers in your mind like a whisper that never fades. Perhaps you have tried everything, changing your environment, keeping yourself busy, even convincing yourself that you have moved on from that story. And yet they return in dreams, in memories, in songs, in words spoken by others without intention. Why does this presence refuse to disappear? What does it truly mean to keep thinking about someone who is no longer an active part of your life? Carl Jung would not have dismissed it as mere attachment or emotional dependency. For him, the unconscious mind operates with reasons that the conscious mind does not yet fully comprehend. When someone remains deeply engraved in your inner world, it is not necessarily a sign that you should reunite with them. It is not even proof that love is still alive. Instead, it signifies that there is something within you that has yet to be seen, acknowledged, or healed. Something that this person came to reveal. Jung taught that our relationships are not random. Every person who enters our life, especially those who leave an emotional imprint, serves a psychic function. They act as mirrors, reflecting what we have yet to recognize within ourselves. That persistent mental presence may have little to do with the person themselves and more to do with what they represented. Perhaps they triggered an old wound, embodied an unconscious image you have carried since childhood, or served as a catalyst for an internal awakening that you have yet to fully understand. For this reason, constantly thinking about someone is not necessarily a sign of unresolved love, but of an incomplete inner process. The mind, when it does not fully comprehend an experience, repeats it. It repeats it to understand. It repeats it to heal. And as long as the lesson remains unintegrated, it will keep returning. Jung stated clearly, "What you do not make conscious will manifest in your life as fate." If, instead of fighting against these thoughts, you choose to listen to them, not from nostalgia or longing, but from deep curiosity, what part of you was activated by that person? What wounds did they touch? What emotions did they force you to confront? Because if you are constantly thinking about someone, it is not them demanding your attention. It is a part of yourself that was illuminated through that relationship. Sometimes the mind insists because something within you remains incomplete, and that unfinished work is not outside of you, nor is it with the other person. It is within you. This is where true inner work begins. It is not about forcefully severing ties or pretending that they never existed. It is about facing the emotional truth they left behind, because as long as you keep running from it, it will continue to chase you. This is not about idealizing the past or clinging to something that no longer exists. It is about understanding that your unconscious mind is still working with that bond. Jung explained that when an emotional experience is not integrated, it becomes an energetic knot in your psyche, a knot that influences your decisions, your future relationships, and even your self-esteem. That is why, when you think of that person, you are not simply reliving the past out of weakness. You are revisiting something unresolved, something that is still waiting to be untangled, not with rejection, but with compassion. And no, you are not crazy. You are not broken. You are not weak for still thinking about someone. You are human. And you are going through one of the deepest processes a soul can experience, the integration of an emotional experience that transformed your life. Do not punish yourself for it. Instead, be grateful that your mind is showing you exactly what still needs your love and presence. Many times, we believe that love is what binds us to someone. But love is not always the force that keeps us attached. Sometimes, it is an unresolved emotion, an unconscious need, or an image we projected without realizing it. According to Carl Jung, we do not love with the heart alone. We love with the entire psyche. And within that psyche are fragments of history, repressed desires, fears we have yet to confront, and symbols that guide us towards something we need to learn. So if you still find yourself thinking about that person, it may not be love. It may be a psychic resonance. Something within you responded to something within them, and that response has not yet been fully integrated. Thinking constantly about someone may be the manifestation of an activated archetype. Perhaps they represented the figure of a savior, an ideal, an emotional refuge, or even a shadow disguised as light. Carl Jung explained that the collective unconscious is filled with universal images that reside within all of us. These archetypes are deeply embedded in our psyche, shaping our perceptions, emotions, and experiences in ways we often do not consciously realize. When someone activates one of these profound images within us, the impact is so deep that even after their departure, the sensation of something missing lingers. This absence is not necessarily because that person is irreplaceable, but because the symbol they embodied has yet to be fully understood or integrated within us. That persistent thought, that constant mental presence of someone who is no longer part of our life, is often not about them at all. Instead, it is a search for closure, but not closure with them. It is a search for closure within yourself. Your unconscious is calling you back to the moment when everything changed, not so you can remain stuck there, but so you can reclaim what you lost when you gave yourself away without reservation. Perhaps you sacrificed parts of yourself for love. Maybe you silenced your voice to avoid conflict, altered your nature to fit into their world, or suppressed your desires to maintain harmony. And even though that person is no longer present in your life, the echo of that self-abandonment continues to reverberate within you. Every time you think of them, your unconscious might not be longing for the relationship itself, but trying to return to you what you once surrendered. It is telling you, look here. Here is where a silent agreement was made, where you ceased to be fully yourself. It is not that you necessarily want to rekindle the relationship. Rather, a part of you desires to come home to yourself. And that, according to Jung, is the true spiritual work. To retrieve what was lost in the journey of love, even when love meant forgetting yourself. Thinking about someone is not always about nostalgia. Sometimes it is a form of resistance to growth. Because growing requires accepting that, no matter how meaningful that story was, it has already fulfilled its purpose. And here lies the internal conflict between the conscious and the unconscious. Your rational mind understands that it is time to move forward, yet your unconscious still seeks understanding. It does not want to simply forget. It wants to integrate. It wants to make sense of the experience, to transform the wound into wisdom. And for that, you need presence, not more distractions, not more desperate attempts to silence your thoughts. Instead, what is required is an honest and compassionate gaze into what truly happened. What did you discover about yourself in that relationship? What parts of you blossomed, and which parts withered away? Who did you truly love? The person or the image you created of them? These are not just casual reflections. They are keys that unlock inner doors that have remained shut since it all ended. Your soul knows that thinking about this person is not a mistake. It is a call to wake up. And the more you allow yourself to answer that call without judgment, the closer you come to true closure. The kind that does not depend on conversations, reunions, or external validation, but on a deep and personal acceptance. The story was what it needed to be. And now, the journey is about returning to yourself. When Carl Jung spoke of individuation, he was referring to this very process, the journey back to the self. Every intense relationship, every loss, every love that left its mark on your soul is part of that journey, not to define you, but to refine you. As if every person you have ever loved was a mirror reflecting hidden aspects of yourself, aspects you had yet to discover. And when you remember that person, what you are truly seeing is not them, but yourself, illuminated in a new way. There are connections that are not severed by absence. Some people do not need to be physically present to continue influencing your emotions, your thoughts, even your daily choices. That is the true depth of a psychological bond. It is not measured by physical proximity, but by the invisible imprint it leaves within you. And that imprint, according to Jung, is not merely the residue of love. It is the result of a resonance between your unconscious and the symbolic role that person played in your life. It is not that you are trapped in the past because of weakness. Rather, it is because your soul still has something to tell you through that story, something you may not have been able to hear while you were emotionally entangled. When we are deeply immersed in a relationship, especially one that touches the very core of our being, clarity is difficult to maintain. The intensity of emotions clouds our judgment. Our feelings dominate our perspective. But when everything ends, when silence settles in, then arises the true opportunity for understanding. And thinking about that person is not necessarily a regression. It can be the beginning of profound realization, the emergence of wisdom that has been waiting to unfold within you. Carl Jung believed that human encounters, especially the most significant ones, are not mere coincidences. They are meetings between souls that recognize each other at a level far deeper than the conscious mind can perceive. This is why, even when you rationally try to move on, something within you resists. There is an unresolved message, a lesson encoded within that experience, waiting to be fully understood. That message is not in the other person. It is within you. It lies in what that relationship awakened, what it stirred within your being, and how it transformed you. Many times, we convince ourselves that if we could just understand the other person, why they did what they did, why they left, why they hurt us, we would finally find closure. But the truth is, closure is never dependent on what the other person says or does. It depends entirely on what you are willing to see within yourself. Perhaps they hurt you. Perhaps they betrayed you, disappointed you, or left you without an explanation. But beyond the pain, there is a lesson your soul needs to integrate. And that lesson does not come through logic. It comes through the emotional experience that still lingers inside of you. What remains in your mind is not the person themselves, but the unresolved emotional experience. It is an incomplete process, suspended in time, waiting to be acknowledged, felt, and ultimately released. More often than not, what we struggle to let go of is not the person. It is the part of ourselves that emerged in their presence. It is the version of you that surfaced during that connection, the one you may not have fully understood, the one you are still unsure if it deserved love. It is that vulnerable facet of yourself, perhaps one you did not even know existed, that was rejected or ignored. And because you did not know how to process that rejection, your mind clings to it, replaying it, analyzing it, reliving it, until you can integrate it with love. You do not need more external answers. What you need is to allow yourself to feel what you have been avoiding. Jung famously said, "What you resist persists." And often, the persistence of a thought is nothing more than the result of avoiding an emotion. So ask yourself, what did you truly feel during that experience? What fear was so overwhelming that you decided to bury it? What part of you was silenced in order to maintain that connection? This is the true source of the attachment that still binds you. Liberation is not a straight path, nor is it immediate. It is a descent into the depths of your soul. And though it may be painful, that very pain is proof that something within you is awakening. Perhaps what you truly need is not to stop thinking about that person, but to stop judging yourself for doing so. Because as long as you fight your own thoughts, you will not be able to access the message they hold. And that message is the key to your growth, your healing, and your transformation. Your unconscious is guiding you towards something greater, not toward the return of a person, but toward the return to yourself, to that place where you feel whole without needing external validation. Because when you finally understand what that person represented, when you integrate the meaning of their presence in your life, you no longer need them to be physically present in order to find peace. And that is true freedom, when you can remember without pain, when you can release without fear, when you can love without attachment. At some point, you may have tried to replace that person. Maybe you did it consciously, seeking someone to fill the void. Or perhaps, without realizing it, you started comparing every new person to the one who is no longer there. But no matter how much you try, the feeling lingers, as if nothing quite fits, as if no new story resonates the same way inside you. And that is not because this person was irreplaceable. It is because the connection you had with them was not just human, it was symbolic. It activated a part of you that you had never met before. And now, your journey is to meet that part of yourself, not through the presence of another, but through your own self-discovery. That is where healing begins. That is where you reclaim your power. That is where you find the version of you that does not just survive without them, but thrives. Jung explained that every deep bond in our lives activates an inner dimension, a hidden layer of our psyche that often remains dormant until a profound connection awakens it. When you miss someone, you are not just longing for their presence, you are yearning for the version of yourself that existed when you were with them. Perhaps you were more vulnerable, more open, more connected to your emotions. Or maybe, in that bond, you lost yourself, sacrificing parts of your essence to maintain the illusion of togetherness. In both cases, thinking about that person is, at its core, thinking about a part of yourself that needs to be rescued, understood, and embraced. This is the key that transforms memory into wisdom. Your unconscious mind is constantly working to restore balance within you. It is not your enemy. It does not want you to suffer or remain stuck in the past. Instead, it uses the tools at its disposal, dreams, recurring thoughts, unexpected emotions, to guide you toward integration. If a person frequently appears in your mind, it is because there is an unresolved emotional story within you that has not yet been fully processed, not through logic, but through symbolism. According to Jung, healing is not a rational process. It is an inner alchemy, an unconscious transformation that only occurs when you allow the unknown within you to become conscious. This alchemy cannot be rushed. It requires stillness, introspection, and the ability to appreciate the significance of what you have lived, not from a place of guilt or longing, but from gratitude. Gratitude not for what was lost, but for what was learned. Because every connection that leaves a mark on us carries within it a seed of transformation. Even if, at this moment, all you can perceive is pain or confusion, buried within that experience is an essential component of your awakening. The goal is not to erase the memory, but to release the weight that it carries. And that is only possible when you stop looking outward for answers and start looking inward, recognizing your role in everything you have felt. Not to blame yourself, but to reclaim your power. The power to understand why you clung so tightly, why you idealized that person, why the loss hurt so deeply. Jung believed that the unconscious stores our experiences not just as memories, but as living symbols that shape our perception of reality. Perhaps this person, without even realizing it, was the catalyst for your transformation, a mirror reflecting parts of yourself that were ready to emerge. And now, what you perceive as attachment may simply be a stage in that process of inner revelation. You do not need to force this person out of your mind. Instead, you need to understand what they represent. What part of you did they awaken? What unfulfilled promise still echoes in your soul? Only then can you turn the page without feeling that something remains unfinished. It is not about forgetting. It is about closing the chapter from the heart. And true closure happens when you recognize that real love does not always take the form of permanence. Sometimes, love comes to reveal something to us, and then it leaves. When we fail to accept this, the soul remains trapped in an endless waiting that leads nowhere. Your mind is not the problem. Your emotions are not the problem. The real conflict arises when you try to force forgetting without having completed understanding. And this is where Jung invites us to go deeper, to stop searching for external solutions and instead engage in dialogue with that wounded part of ourselves that still longs to be seen and heard. Because that is the only way the image of that person will stop haunting you. Not because you have erased them, but because they no longer have anything left to teach you. When someone continues to appear in your mind despite time, distance, and logic telling you that there is nothing left to hold on to, what is truly manifesting is not that person. It is an internal process that you have yet to complete. It is a psychic movement seeking resolution, calling for your attention from the depths of your being. And no matter how many times you try to ignore it, the unconscious does not disappear through denial. It simply transforms into symptoms, into repetitive thoughts, into emotions that defy explanation, into decisions that you struggle to understand. It will persist until you acknowledge it, until you face it, and until you finally integrate it into your wholeness. According to Carl Jung, the soul possesses its own intelligence, an ancient wisdom that does not adhere to the rules of logic or the linear progression of time. Instead, it moves through symbols, images, and emotionally charged experiences. If your soul continues to return to a certain person, it is because something significant happened there, something that needs to be retrieved. Not to go back, but to reclaim a part of yourself that you have yet to integrate. That person could have been light or shadow, comfort or wound. But what truly matters now is not what they were, but what they awakened within you. Many times, We engage in relationships from a place of invisible lack. We search in others for what we have not been able to give ourselves, and when that relationship ends, we feel as though something has been torn away from us. But what truly hurts is not the loss of the other person. It is the emptiness that has been exposed. Jung believed that every loss is also an opportunity, an invitation to see that emptiness not as a punishment, but as fertile ground where something new can grow. But for this to happen, you must stop focusing on the absence of the other and begin to understand what that absence is trying to teach you. This is not about filling the space with distractions. It is not about hardening yourself or pretending that nothing happened. It is about descending into that place where it still hurts, with the willingness to understand. Because when you dare to look at pain with awareness, it stops controlling you. It no longer defines you. Instead, it becomes a portal to something deeper. Jung taught that it is in moments of crisis that the soul has the opportunity to expand, and this persistent mental urge to return to someone may be your inner crisis, pushing you toward growth, urging you to see beyond what is immediately apparent. Not everything you feel is a sign to take action externally. Sometimes, what you feel is an invitation to turn inward, to explore your own history, your emotional needs, and your relational patterns. You may be unconsciously repeating a bond that you have known long before, perhaps one that originated in childhood with figures who left an emotional imprint on you. And this person, the one who now lingers in your thoughts, may have activated that old bond without you even realizing it. Not to confuse you, but to offer you a new opportunity to heal. When you understand this, something shifts. You no longer see that person as an obsession or an open wound, but as a symbol urging you to look at what you have been avoiding. Maybe it was the need to feel validated. Maybe it was the fear of not being enough. Maybe it was the hope that someone would come and complete you. And in recognizing this, you reclaim your power. Because what you once believed only the other person could give you begins to bloom from within. This is deep work. It is not comfortable, but it is transformative. It is about seeing what that relationship revealed about you. It is about extracting meaning from the memory. It is about being grateful even for what hurt. Because that pain illuminated something that needed to be healed. When you do this, your energy shifts. You are no longer at war with what was. You are no longer waiting for the thoughts to disappear. Instead, you are embracing what belongs to you. The lessons, the growth, the seed of a new version of yourself that emerged because of that encounter. There will come a moment when that person stops appearing in your mind with the same intensity, not because you erase them, nor because you replace them, but because they no longer occupy the same space within you. The memory will remain as part of your story, but it will no longer hurt. It will no longer disturb you. It will no longer dictate your emotions. And on that day, without even realizing it, you will have completed a cycle. Because what truly gets released is not the person. It is the energy you unknowingly invested in them. It is the expectation you placed upon them. It is the part of you that was still waiting for answers or a different ending. And when all of that transforms, what remains is peace. A deep, genuine peace. Not the kind you fake to move on, but the kind that comes when you no longer need to understand everything, to feel at ease. Jung said that there is no awakening of consciousness without pain. And yes, thinking constantly about someone can be a form of pain, but it can also be a sign that you are on the edge of a transformation. Do not run from what you feel. Do not punish yourself for remembering. Listen to what your soul is trying to tell you through those thoughts, because behind every emotion, there is a truth waiting to be revealed. And that truth is not outside of you. It has always been within. You have gone through a process that many people experience, but few dare to look at with true depth. If you are listening to this, if you have made it this far, it is because something within you is ready to let go. Not from forgetfulness, but from understanding. Not from rejection, but from love for yourself. That is the closure your soul needs. And when you do this, not only do you heal yourself, but you also pave the way for others to do the same. Because your process has meaning. Your pain has meaning. And so does your awakening. If this message resonated with you, if at any moment you felt as if we were speaking directly to your soul, then I invite you to be part of this growing community. This is not just a space for content. It is a space for connection, for understanding, and for transformation. Every time you share what you feel, every time you leave a comment expressing your experience, every time you give a like or share this video, you are doing something much bigger than you realize. You are helping this message reach someone who desperately needs it. You are becoming a link in a chain of light, a guiding force that may lead someone to the clarity they have been searching for. There are people out there, just like you, who are experiencing the same emotions, facing the same struggles, but they haven't yet found the words to express what they feel. They might still be lost in confusion, in doubt, in uncertainty. And maybe, just maybe, you are the bridge that will lead them to a moment of realization. Maybe your comment, your engagement, your presence here will be the sign they were waiting for, to know that they are not alone. This channel exists for a reason, to remind you that your emotions matter, that your inner work, the effort you put into understanding yourself, healing and evolving, is not just changing your life, it is inspiring others to change theirs as well. So, if this content has touched something deep within you, if it has sparked a realization, a feeling of connection, or even just a moment of peace, let it be known. Leave a comment, share your thoughts, express what this journey means to you. Not out of obligation, not because it's expected, but because together we are creating something greater than ourselves, a space where deep knowledge, emotional healing, and authenticity are not just ideas, but realities. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening with an open heart, for daring to look inward, for allowing yourself to feel, to question, to grow. This is your moment. You are living it with courage, and that is something truly powerful. I'll see you in the next video. Imagine this. You wake up as the first ray of light touches your face, but you don't feel anything. No gratitude, no excitement, no sense of purpose. There's just a weight on your chest that you can't explain. It's not sadness, and it's not despair. It's something much more elusive, emptiness. You get out of bed, get dressed, eat a tasteless breakfast on autopilot, and step outside to face a day you never really chose to live. You walk into a routine that wasn't built by you. You go to a job that you don't love, surrounded by people who don't truly know you, and everything appears normal. No one screams, no one cries, no one complains. And yet, something deeply silent is dying inside of you. What if that tiredness you feel every day isn't physical? What if it's not stress, not a lack of motivation, not even clinical depression? What if what's slowly draining your spirit is the fact that you're trapped in a life you never consciously chose? Carl Jung once wrote that the greatest danger of modern life is not external chaos, but internal conformity, the slow erosion of the self, the quiet surrender of the soul in exchange for approval, for superficial success, for the validation of a system that punishes individuality. How did we end up here? They told us that we would study, get a job, build a family, save money, and that would be the formula for a good life. But no one ever asked us if that was what we truly wanted. No one taught us to look inward. No one prepared us for the invisible cost of obedience. And now, millions of people walk through life like sleepwalkers, functional, polite, seemingly successful, but empty. Not tired because of what they do, but because of what they have stopped being. There's an invisible trap in our society, one that Jung saw with clarity. The modern individual has no soul, only a function. We are trained to perform, not to feel, to produce, not to question, to conform, not to be. But when was the last time you truly questioned your day-to-day life, your job, your relationships, your goals? Are they really yours? Or were they implanted by a culture that worships efficiency and mocks introspection? Think about it. How many decisions have you made from a place of authenticity? And how many were born from fear? Fear of disappointing others, of failing, of not fitting in. And in that silent fear, how much of yourself have you had to hide? This is not a kind of tiredness that a vacation can fix. It's not something a new business or a self-help book can solve. It's deeper than that. It's the silent scream of a soul begging for a life filled with meaning. It's the shadow of the life you've left behind in the name of doing what others said was right. Modern psychology tries to medicate this discomfort. It gives it clinical names, isolates its symptoms, and tells you it can be managed. But Jung knew something essential. The soul doesn't suffer without reason. Behind the exhaustion, behind the chronic boredom, behind the constant anxiety, there's a terrifying truth that most people don't want to face. The life you're living is not your own. And still, every morning, you repeat the same ritual. Because it's easier to stay asleep than to stare into the abyss of an unlived life. It's more comfortable to be part of the machinery than to stop and ask if that machinery is destroying you. But what if you dared to look beyond the fatigue? What would you discover if you began to undo the social programming that dictates who you're supposed to be? Are you willing to give up the false safety of an acceptable life to start living an authentic one? Because here's something no one ever told you. The soul always knows when it's in prison. And even if you can't hear it screaming, the silence is heavy. It consumes you. It drains you. Until one day, you may finally wake up, only to realize it's already too late. And it is precisely in that existential silence that the real journey begins. Because this is not just an emotional issue. It's a deep psychological phenomenon with philosophical roots that have been growing silently for centuries. And now, it's time to unearth those roots so that you can see what has always been there, waiting for you to confront it. The hidden problem and its psychological origins. There is a silent tragedy that plays out in millions of souls every day. It doesn't appear in medical textbooks. It can't be diagnosed in a 15-minute consultation. But it consumes life from within. The disconnection between who we are and the life we live. Carl Jung referred to it as alienation from the self, a deeply human phenomenon where the individual becomes so detached from their inner essence that they begin to live behind a mask that smiles, functions, interacts, and even succeeds, while deep within, the soul is crying out, unheard and unseen. This mask becomes so well rehearsed that even we start to believe it's who we really are. But beneath the surface, there's a silent agony, a sense of falseness, of not belonging in our own lives. How do we arrive at such a fractured state? It doesn't happen suddenly or dramatically. It begins in childhood, and not necessarily through acts of violence or overt neglect, but through something far more subtle and insidious: conditional love. We learn from a very young age that our worthiness, our value, and even our right to be loved is linked to our ability to obey, to please, to fit expectations. And so, bit by bit, we build a socially acceptable personality. We become what others want us to be. In doing so, we begin to amputate parts of ourselves that don't fit into that mold. We silence our sensitivity, hide our anger, ignore our intuition, dismiss our odd dreams, and suppress the questions that made adults uncomfortable. Every piece we deny, every trait we hide, is a surrender to survival in a world that rewards conformity over authenticity. And in the name of adaptation, we repress the very elements that make us whole. Jung issued a warning: what you deny submits you. What you accept transforms you. Yet modern society does not encourage acceptance. It promotes denial. It trains us to conceal our deeper truths, to disconnect from our rawness, our vulnerability, our instincts. We're taught to amputate parts of the soul in exchange for acceptance, success, and belonging. And with every internal compromise, we become more polished on the outside and more hollow within. This is not a new crisis. Thinkers before Jung saw the same spiritual fracture. Nietzsche called it the morality of the slave, a way of living rooted in obedience, fear, and the desperate need for external validation. Schopenhauer described it as the veil of illusion, a life caught in endless desire, never reaching true peace. Sartre called it bad faith, the self-deception of living a life that denies our radical freedom to choose who we are. But Jung went deeper. He realized that the root of the problem is not only cultural, but also deeply psychological. It lies in the collective unconscious, a vast inner landscape made of symbols, archetypes, and inherited psychological structures that shape us from within, long before we are aware of them. According to Jung, every soul carries a unique path, a journey called individuation. It is the sacred process of integrating all parts of the self, even those we were forced to reject, abandon, or hide. Yet the modern world has no space for this inner journey. Our educational systems do not teach introspection. Our work environments rarely reward authenticity, and our family systems, often unconsciously, repeat cycles of trauma under the guise of love. So, what do we do in the face of this absence? We adapt. We build efficient, productive, agreeable identities. We become what the world demands of us, and in doing so, we forget who we were before the world told us who we needed to be. This is the deep root of the exhaustion you feel. It is not physical fatigue. It is a hunger of the soul, a tension between the life you are living and the life your soul came here to experience, a dissonance between your outer performance and your inner truth. And the most tragic irony, many people try to cure this spiritual emptiness with even more effort. They chase goals, start routines, follow diets, rearrange their lives, believing that if they just improve enough, that emptiness will vanish. But the soul cannot be nourished by achievements. You cannot heal the wounded parts of your spirit with productivity. The shadow that lives within you, the parts of yourself you denied, shamed, and exiled, does not disappear because your to-do list is complete. No external accomplishment can fill an internal void. The only path forward is inward, to pause, to listen, to feel the things you've numbed, to reclaim the pieces of yourself you once disowned, to move beyond the mask and remember the face underneath. The truth is, your soul has never stopped calling. It's been whispering through your anxiety, your discontent, your restlessness, not as punishment, but as a guide, because your real self is not lost. It's buried under layers of expectation, fear, and forgotten dreams, and all it wants is to come home. But you cannot fill a hole in the soul with accomplishments. You cannot silence the shadow with productivity. Carl Jung taught that the shadow is not evil itself, but rather the suppressed, the parts of ourselves we exile. What you hide does not vanish. It transforms into exhaustion, anxiety, and self-sabotage. It becomes that quiet inner voice whispering, "This makes no sense," the one you've trained yourself to ignore. And then one day, you feel drained. You look in the mirror and no longer recognize the eyes staring back. You are still breathing, but you're no longer living. You function like a cog in a machine you don't understand, one you don't know how to escape. Jung echoed what Viktor Frankl also understood. When meaning is absent, we become addicted to distraction. Pleasure, power, or validation become substitutes. That explains much of today's behavior. The compulsive use of social media, the fear of solitude, the constant comparison, the obsession with becoming someone in the eyes of others. Beneath it all lies the same root. We have lost contact with the soul. Jung said, the soul doesn't scream. It whispers, and if you ignore its voice, it will slowly drain you from within. That is the deeper issue. You are not tired because of what you do. You are tired because of what you are suppressing while doing it. You have been conditioned to serve the system, not yourself. And unless that truth is confronted, the inner void will only expand. Nothing outside of you can ever fill it. Now that you've glimpsed the hidden roots of your fatigue, a more urgent question emerges. What is this emptiness doing to you without you realizing it? Because its effects are not just felt, they ripple into how you love, how you work, how you quietly abandon your own dreams. In the next moments, you'll see how this invisible wound is shaping every part of your life without your awareness. Its invisible consequences. You don't see it. It has no color or shape, but it is there, in your tone of voice, in how you connect with others, in what you dream, or more precisely, in what you no longer dare to dream. When you're trapped in a life you never chose, every part of you adapts to the prison. Your language becomes dull. Your emotions become numb. The light in your eyes dims. And most dangerous of all, you stop thinking for yourself. You begin to echo truths you never questioned, defend beliefs you never truly felt, pursue goals that were never yours. But this doesn't happen overnight. The soul does not surrender in a single moment. It retreats quietly, in layers, like an animal that slowly learns resistance is futile. First, you let go of small desires. Then, you silence your discomfort. Later, you justify your apathy, until one day, weariness feels normal, and resignation starts to look like virtue. Carl Jung warned that the greatest threat to the human psyche is not open trauma, but the slow, quiet detachment from its own center. When you no longer know what you want, when you no longer know who you are, when you live without desire, without fire, without questions. This is not maturity. It is surrender. And surrender has real consequences. First, you lose your sense of time. When you start living a life that isn't truly yours, the days begin to blur. One day fades into the next, and suddenly it's impossible to distinguish between Monday and Wednesday. Even weekends lose their meaning. Saturday, once a symbol of rest or joy, becomes just another slot in your calendar. Life turns into a repetitive cycle of tasks, obligations, and routines, devoid of emotional memory. Time no longer feels like something you experience. It becomes a conveyor belt you're forced to ride. You wake up, go through the motions, and go to bed, all while wondering if anything truly happened. You're alive, technically, but not really living. Second, your self-image becomes distorted. The person you once were, the vibrant, curious feeling self, starts to disappear behind layers of masks and expectations. You begin to question who you are, but not in a deep, philosophical way. It's a more disorienting, empty kind of doubt. You wonder if you're an introvert or just exhausted from pretending. You can't tell if you've stopped loving or if you've simply forgotten how to receive love in your current emotional state. Your talents, once so clear, now seem distant or delusional. Your boundaries blur. Your self-worth crumbles. You can't recognize the person in the mirror, not because they've changed, but because you've drifted so far from yourself that even your own reflection feels like a stranger. Third, you start connecting with others from a place of lack. When your soul feels fractured, you instinctively reach outside of yourself, desperately seeking what you've lost within. You search for validation, for direction, for a sense of purpose, but not because others owe it to you. It's because you've forgotten how to find it within yourself. And that's where relationships begin to suffer. Bonds born from emptiness are fragile. They are rooted in need, not connection. This is how codependency starts. Toxic dynamics emerge. Desperate attachments form, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of being alone, of being unseen, of being unloved. You cling, not because you care too much, but because you no longer know what it feels like to be whole on your own. Fourth, you begin to escape constantly into food, into endless scrolling, into porn, into meaningless entertainment, into impulsive shopping, into anything that numbs the silence within. Not because you're lazy or weak, but because the pain of being disconnected from your true self is unbearable. Neuroscience supports this. When we live in dissonance, when our outer actions contradict our inner desires, the brain enters a state of chronic stress. Survival circuits kick in. Cortisol levels rise. Natural dopamine production drops. You end up walking through life in a state of constant alertness, even though there's no visible threat. You're tired, irritated, indifferent, but you don't understand why. You just know that something inside feels wrong, broken. Society calls this adulthood. But Carl Jung had another name for it: disindividuation, the reverse of soul growth. It's the unraveling of who you are meant to be. And here lies the cruelest irony. The more successful you become by society's standards, the more you risk betraying yourself. The more functional you appear, the more disconnected you might actually be. The more praise you receive, the deeper your truth might be buried under layers of conformity and performance. And so, the emptiness grows, not from failure, but from succeeding at things that don't align with your essence. This existential void doesn't only show up in big life decisions. It creeps into the small ones too. You accept jobs that drain you. You maintain friendships that deplete you. You repeat habits that quietly destroy you. You say yes when everything in your body screams no. And the worst part? You justify it all with words like maturity, realism, responsibility. You convince yourself this is what it means to be an adult. But deep down, beneath all the logic and defense mechanisms, you know something's off. You know you weren't born to be a shadow of your true self. You know that another kind of life is possible, but that it's a path that won't reveal itself through conformity or comfort. Psychiatrist Gabor Mate, in his work on trauma, explains something profoundly important. When a person has to choose between authenticity and belonging, they will almost always choose belonging. Why? Because being rejected for who you are is more painful than pretending to be someone else. And so, from a young age, we learn to betray our authenticity to avoid the terror of abandonment. But this survival mechanism comes with a cost. You become a more palatable version of yourself, a version that's acceptable, tolerable, normal. And after a while, you forget what it ever felt like to be truly yourself. And now, here we are, an entire generation that is confused, anxious, high-performing, yet empty. People who've done everything right, but still feel like something's missing. People who've followed the script: education, job, relationships, success, only to arrive at a place that feels hollow. And the consequences aren't waiting somewhere in the future. They are already here, showing up in your thoughts, your emotions, your choices, your restlessness, your fatigue. They are woven into the way you exist, right now. If you don't change the internal landscape, it won't matter how many times you switch careers, how many relationships you end, how many countries you move to. You will carry the same feeling wherever you go. Because the real prison isn't outside of you, it's inside. And escape doesn't come from rearranging the external. It comes from a deeper, quieter form of revolution. But this isn't where the story ends. There is a way out. There is a silent rebellion, one that doesn't begin with rage or destruction, but with a question. A brave, unfiltered, soul-shaking question. What would happen if I stopped being who the world expects and started being who I truly am? This is where transformation begins, not with quitting your job or walking away from everything. That's just another form of avoidance. Real rebellion doesn't require you to burn your life down. It requires you to wake up within it. It asks you to sit with the discomfort instead of escaping it, to be honest instead of agreeable, to choose yourself, moment by moment, even when the world wants someone else. And it all begins with a single question, one that pierces through years of conditioning, performance, and silence. What if everything I've ever called me isn't really me at all? Carl Jung believed that the process of individuation, the journey toward your true self, is neither comfortable, nor linear, nor socially endorsed. It's more like a descent into the underworld, where you're forced to confront everything you've denied, repressed, forgotten, your shadow, your real desire, your rawest truth. It's the hero's path, not of playing a role, but of daring to write one's own story. And where does it begin? Not with answers, but with brutal honesty, with a pause, with the kind of silence that lets you hear that voice you've been avoiding for years. Yes, that one. The voice that visits you at dawn when sleep won't come. The one that whispers when you look into the mirror and no longer recognize yourself. The voice that quietly asks, is this it? Is this really the life you came here to live? Jung taught that every deep transformation begins when the urge to be yourself becomes stronger than the fear of not belonging. When the pain of falsehood outweighs the risk of being real. And this is where most people falter. They want transformation without confrontation, healing without discomfort, evolution without loss. But no true self can be built on a false foundation. The first act of rebellion, then, is to feel fully, to allow the void to ache, the anxiety to speak, the sadness to scream, without numbing yourself with distractions. Because behind every emotion you fear lies the version of you that you've forgotten. The second act is to question without fear. What would I do if I didn't need to please anyone? What choices have I made from fear and which from true desire? What part of myself am I still hiding to be loved? These questions don't come with quick answers, but each one cracks the walls of the prison. Each one melts the mask a little more. Then comes the hardest part, acting differently. Even if your voice trembles, even if detachment hurts, even if the world doesn't understand. Maybe you say no for the first time to something you always accepted. Maybe you choose art over money. Maybe you allow yourself to cry in front of someone. Or maybe you just stare at your reflection and admit, I don't know who I am, but I'm ready to find out. That is freedom. Not a life without rules, but one with rules that are your own. A life where every step, every relationship, every decision is aligned with your inner truth. And yes, it will hurt. You'll lose things, people, whole chapters of your life that no longer resonate. But you'll gain something priceless, yourself. Carl Jung echoed Nietzsche in saying that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. But your why can't be borrowed. It can't be inherited, taught, or approved by others. It must rise from within you like a flame no one can extinguish. And that flame, even if small, is enough to light your path. Becoming yourself is not becoming someone new. It's remembering who you were before the world told you who you should be. It's reclaiming your voice, your desire, your sacred madness for a life with meaning. And when you start walking that path, something shifts. You no longer need endless distractions. You stop measuring yourself by achievements. You don't beg for validation like a starving child. You begin to live with purpose. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're finally asking the right questions. And then, the unexpected happens. Fatigue turns into energy, anxiety into clarity, confusion into direction. Why? Because you're no longer betraying yourself. Because for the first time, you're truly on your own side. But there's still one thing left. A realization so deep, so essential, it can rewrite your entire story. It's not a tip or a technique. It's a truth that changes how you see life, suffering, and your role in this world. In the next and final part, we will reveal it. The supreme truth, the final realization. What if suffering wasn't a mistake, but a message? What if every piece of anguish, every sleepless night, every silent sigh was trying to tell you something you've long forgotten? The deepest truth Carl Jung ever uncovered isn't only found in his theories or even his books. In this life you lead, it's not about running away from pain or avoiding discomfort. Rather, it is about facing it head-on, about dedicating yourself to unraveling the mysteries that lie within your suffering. What you discover in that process is both beautifully simple and profoundly terrifying. The clarity you seek, true clarity, can only come when you dare to look deep inside your own heart. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." This awakening is precisely what you have been avoiding or postponing. For so long, you believed your exhaustion stemmed from external sources, the pressures of work, the relentless demands of life, the shadows of your past, the overwhelming stress that seems to follow you everywhere. But now, finally, you see it for what it is. That exhaustion isn't physical, it is spiritual. It is the weight of living out of alignment with the deepest needs of your soul. Your body may show signs of wear and tear, but it is your soul that is truly weary, ignored, silenced, and disconnected from the purpose it longs to fulfill. And your mind, fractured and scattered, loses its way when it loses sight of why you are here in the first place. The modern world has conditioned you to look outside yourself for everything, for love, for meaning, for validation, for peace. It has turned you into a seeker, a consumer endlessly chasing solutions in the external world, quick fixes, distractions, temporary comforts, when in truth, all of these things were meant to be found within you. You have always been the creator of your own answers, the originator of your own truth. Yet, you forgot this fundamental fact. Here lies the ultimate truth. Your soul was never meant to fit neatly into a box, to conform, to simply function like a cog in a machine. It came here to expand, to grow, to be fully alive in all its messy, beautiful complexity. Every time you denied this truth, every time you tried to squeeze yourself into roles or expectations that felt unnatural, you broke a little more. But the good news is that the path back is not out there somewhere. It is already inside you. Remember who you were before fear took hold, before duty and shoulds dictated your life. You are not your job. You are not your past trauma. You are not your successes or your failures. You are the consciousness that quietly watches all of it unfold. You are the soft voice that whispers truth in the silence, the spark that refuses to go out even when darkness feels all-encompassing. That spark, that indestructible core, which Jung called the self, is exactly what you came here to manifest. You were never meant to simply survive. You came here to individuate, to slowly become the whole, complete expression of who you truly are. Light and shadow, chaos and order, instinct and soul, all parts of one magnificent being. When you finally embrace this wholeness, the internal battles cease. The exhaustion that once consumed you begins to fade because you are no longer pretending to be someone you're not. Anxiety loosens its grip because you've stopped running in endless circles. What once felt like emptiness reveals itself as sacred space. What you once interpreted as pain now shows up as guidance, a teacher helping you navigate your path. The chaos that seemed unbearable becomes the very ground upon which you rebuild yourself, stronger and wiser. And in this moment, everything makes sense. Every misstep, every dark night of the soul, every moment of doubt, all of it was leading you here, to this exact understanding. You are not broken. You are remembering. You are not lost. You are waking up. And when this awakening takes place, when you stop running from yourself and start truly inhabiting your being, the world around you changes too. Not because the world itself has transformed, but because you are no longer the same person looking at it. This is the ultimate realization. The freedom, the peace, the sense of belonging you have been seeking in the outside world has always been inside you. It was never lost. It was just buried beneath layers of fear and conditioning. So breathe. You don't need to fix everything today. You don't need to accomplish it all at once. You only need to come back to yourself, to feel what you have been avoiding, to face what you have silenced, and to be what you have hidden away. This is your revolution. This is your act of love. This is your true homecoming. You are not tired. You are simply coming home. If you've made it this far, it's no coincidence. Something is stirring within you, an awakening that perhaps you hadn't fully recognized before. It means that a part of your inner self is beginning to change, to grow, and to seek something greater, something that transcends the daily grind. This moment you're experiencing is a sign, a nudge from your own consciousness, telling you that you're ready to explore new perspectives, question old beliefs, and open the door to transformation. I invite you to take a moment and share in the comments which part of this message moved you the most. Your reflections are not only valuable to you, but can also become a beacon of light for those walking a similar path. Sometimes, when we express what resonates with us, we create a ripple of inspiration that can reach souls far beyond our imagination. Your words could be just what someone else needs to hear right now, a source of encouragement, a spark of hope, or simply the reassurance that they are not alone. If this message has resonated with you, if it has made you reflect, please consider supporting this channel in whatever way feels right for you. Whether it's by clicking the subscribe button, activating the notification bell, or simply participating and sharing, your energy and participation are the fuel that keeps this content flowing. Every little bit of support helps these ideas and reflections reach more hearts and minds, reaching those who need them most. The energy you contribute here is more powerful than you know. It helps maintain a space where consciousness can grow, where deeper understanding can flourish, and where the seeds of change can be planted. By being part of this community, you become a common thread that unites those seeking meaning, growth, and transformation. So thank you, not only for watching and listening, but for being here, for being open, and for being willing to embark on this journey of awakening alongside others. Your presence matters, and together we can continue to build a space where truth, inspiration, and healing continue to spread.
Men are not as complicated as many imagine. Deep within their psyche lies a primal instinct, an unconscious call that drives them to protect, conquer, and provide. But this instinct does not awaken for just any woman. It only manifests when something deep inside them is activated. Carl Jung described this phenomenon as the activation of internal archetypes, powerful psychological forces that shape our reactions without us even realizing it. Some men will cross oceans, risk their stability, security, and even their own lives for a woman, while others barely bother to reply to a message. And this is not about luck, beauty, or even love. The true key to understanding this dynamic lies in the concept of projection. A man does not simply fall in love with a woman. He falls in love with what she awakens within him. When a woman touches the deepest part of his psyche, she becomes more than just a person. She transforms into a symbol, a meaning, something he feels compelled to protect, pursue, and keep close at all costs. This phenomenon is not manipulation. It is not a game of power. It is the essence of human psychological connection. A woman who understands this principle does not need to beg for attention, chase after a man, or try to convince him to stay. He will remain by his own choice because, in her presence, he feels stronger, more complete, more aligned with the man he aspires to be. Perhaps you have experienced this frustration before. You gave everything, offered your best, were loyal and understanding. Yet you were still left behind, ignored, or seen as just another option. Meanwhile, other women seem to make little effort, yet they receive devotion, commitment, and sacrifice. This is not a coincidence. The difference is not in how much you give, but in how you position yourself within a man's mind. It is not about being perfect or trying to please him all the time. It is about becoming a presence that naturally and irresistibly activates his masculine essence. Men do not consciously choose whom to prioritize. This process happens at the unconscious level, where archetypes and deep impulses make the decision for them. Jung always emphasized that whatever is not brought to consciousness manifests as fate. This means that if you do not understand how to awaken a man's loyalty and commitment, he will be guided by instincts that drive him away, without even knowing why. But when you understand what truly makes a man risk everything for a woman, you gain access to a power that has always been within you, a power that does not force, does not beg, and does not need to prove anything. Today, I am going to show you exactly how this works. By the time we finish, you will understand why some men defy everything for a woman, while others simply walk away without hesitation. You will see that the difference is not in who she is, but in what she awakens within him. If you want to understand the kind of influence that makes a man cross mountains for you, stay with me until the end, because what I am about to reveal will completely change the way you see relationships. Respect is the invisible foundation upon which every emotional bond stands. When a man feels respected, he becomes more loving, more present, and more willing to give himself to a woman. But when that respect is lost, something inside him begins to shut down. Carl Jung always emphasized that the unconscious responds to subtle stimuli, and this directly applies to relationships. Small gestures, tones of voice, glances, all communicate something far deeper than words. If a man feels belittled, criticized, or treated with disdain, his instincts will react. He may remain physically by a woman's side, but emotionally, he will begin to disconnect, withdrawing into a space where he no longer feels the need to invest his energy. This happens because, for the masculine mind, respect is not just an abstract concept. It is a language through which he perceives his own value within a relationship. Jung explained that every person projects their shadow onto others, and in a man, this projection manifests when he feels that his presence is not valued. Small actions, like rolling your eyes, interrupting his words, or dismissing his ideas, create a subtle wound that pushes him away, even unconsciously. On the other hand, a woman who knows how to listen, who expresses gratitude, and who shows trust in his decisions creates an environment where he feels safe to lead, love, and commit. But that sense of security does not mean submission or blind obedience. On the contrary, a strong woman can disagree with a man without pushing him away, so long as she does so with respect. The difference lies in how communication takes place. When a man feels heard instead of attacked, his natural response is not resistance, but openness. He becomes more inclined to reflect, adjust his behavior, and even yield when necessary. This happens because his psyche does not perceive an attack on his identity, but rather an interaction that keeps his self-esteem intact. However, respect is not something that should be demanded. Rather, it is reflected in how a woman sees herself. A woman who respects herself, values her time, energy, and personal boundaries, naturally commands respect from a man. If she tolerates mistreatment, inconsistency, and neglect, she unconsciously teaches him that he does not need to honor her. But when she maintains high standards, when she walks away from situations that do not value her, she sends a clear and powerful message. I know my worth. And here lies the crucial point. A man who truly cares about her is not intimidated by this. On the contrary, he feels a calling to rise, to become someone worthy of that respect. Jung's archetype of the hero is activated when a man perceives that he needs to be better to stand beside a woman who respects herself. And it is at that moment that he not only surrenders emotionally, but also commits himself unbreakably, because he understands that by being with her, he becomes a greater man than he was before. Men do not associate love with demands or expectations. They do not give themselves because someone insists, demands, or imposes conditions. They surrender to something far more subtle, yet incredibly powerful. Jung described this phenomenon as psychic projection. A man does not fall in love with a woman per se, but with how he feels about himself when he is by her side. If, in her presence, he feels like a king, a leader, a man capable of facing any challenge, He will do whatever is necessary to keep her close. But here's the secret. This does not happen because she flatters him or places him on a pedestal, but because she genuinely believes in him. Her silent recognition of his worth activates an instinctive drive, something deep within him that compels him to protect, provide, and prioritize her above all else. Not out of obligation, but because he desires to. And what happens when a man finds this kind of woman? He feels anchored in a world that constantly challenges him, that demands he be strong, resilient, and unbreakable. Society teaches men to be providers, to face hardships without showing pain, but it rarely acknowledges that they too need a refuge, a place where they can be vulnerable without fear of judgment. The mistake many women make is failing to recognize this silent need. A man may be willing to fight the world, face challenges, and bear enormous responsibilities, but he will only risk everything for a woman who offers him something he cannot find anywhere else, a space where he can be himself without needing to put up defenses. Since childhood, many men have been conditioned to suppress their emotions. They have been taught to hold back tears, to never show weakness, to keep moving forward without complaining. As a result, they build walls, learn to hide their pain, and only show what they believe is acceptable. But behind that rigid appearance, there are fears, doubts, and wounds that they rarely share. When a woman understands this and offers him a safe space where he can express himself without fear of ridicule or rejection, she becomes irreplaceable. And not because he needs to be saved, but because he finds in her a connection that no one else can offer. The key to creating that safe space does not lie in solving his problems for him. Men do not want to be fixed. What they truly desire is to trust that they can open up without their words being used against them later. They need to feel that their vulnerability will not make them appear weak or unworthy. Many hesitate to share their struggles because they fear being ridiculed or belittled. If, when trying to express himself, he is criticized, rejected, or made to feel inadequate, he will withdraw. And that distancing happens slowly, almost imperceptibly. First, he speaks less, then he spends more time alone, until one day, he becomes emotionally inaccessible, seeking validation and comfort elsewhere. But when a woman responds with understanding, patience, and reassurance, everything changes. He begins to associate her presence with peace rather than pressure. Men are drawn to women who allow them to be their true selves. A woman who fuels his dreams, who believes in him even when he doubts himself, is a woman he values deeply and definitively. This does not mean solving his problems or carrying his burdens. It means being a steady presence, a silent pillar of strength and stability. And when he finds that, there are no limits to what he will do to keep her by his side. The true bond between a man and a woman is not solely based on physical attraction or the convenience of being together. It is born from something much deeper, the profound sense that, by their side, one can truly be themselves. It is not about offering immediate solutions or trying to fix the other person. A woman's strength lies in her ability to listen without judgment, to remind a man of his worth without diminishing his struggles. Carl Jung described this dynamic as the integration of the feminine and masculine within the human psyche, a relationship where both individuals empower each other rather than seeking to control or suppress one another. But here lies a crucial point. Providing emotional support and security does not mean tolerating mistreatment or assuming the role of a therapist for a man who refuses to grow. A relationship should not be a dumping ground for problems or a refuge for someone who never gives back. Instead, it should be a space where both individuals feel safe to express themselves without fear, where truth can be spoken openly without one having to hide from the other. This kind of emotional security not only strengthens a relationship, but also deepens intimacy, builds trust, and makes a man truly commit. A man may feel physically attracted to many women, but he will only risk everything for the one who sees beyond the surface, the one who understands his silent struggles and makes him feel that he is enough, not just as a provider, but as a human being. When a man finds that emotional sanctuary, he will do whatever it takes to keep that woman by his side. Men are naturally wired to pursue, conquer, and cherish what they perceive as rare and meaningful. If something is given to them effortlessly without challenge, its value unconsciously diminishes in their eyes. This does not mean that a woman should manipulate or play with a man's emotions. Rather, she must understand the delicate balance between mystery and appreciation. A woman who masters this skill possesses a unique power over a man's heart. She creates a sense of excitement, curiosity, and challenge while simultaneously making him feel deeply valued. This combination is irresistible because it activates two fundamental impulses in his mind: the desire to conquer and the need to engage with mystery. However, this does not stem from mind games but from depth. A man should never feel that he has fully figured out a woman, that there is nothing left to explore. When a woman maintains her individuality, when she has a life beyond the relationship, her own dreams, passions, and personal growth, she remains intriguing. He feels drawn to her because there is always something new to discover. Jung explained that the human unconscious is constantly seeking the unknown, that which challenges and expands our perception. When a woman becomes a living mystery, not because she hides things, but because she is in constant evolution, a man feels the need to keep investing in her. The fatal mistake occurs when a woman abandons her individuality to mold herself entirely around a man. The moment she sets aside her interests, passions, and essence to exist solely for him, the mystery disappears, and with it, the deep excitement. A man may admire a woman who gives herself completely, but without the element of individuality, fascination fades. This is precisely why the most intense and long-lasting relationships are those where both partners continue to grow as individuals, because it is in this continuous growth that the true power lies, the power to keep a man committed, passionate, and willing to risk everything to keep that connection alive. Mystery may spark a man's interest, but on its own, it is not enough to keep him committed. The true bond happens when that mystery is balanced with something equally essential: appreciation. Men may appear strong, confident, and unshakable, but deep down, they crave validation just like anyone else. They need to know that their efforts are recognized, that their actions make a difference, and that they add value to the life of the woman they love. Jung described this need as a reflection of the human psyche's search for meaning. A man who feels that his presence matters becomes a man willing to give more, to invest more, and to commit fully. Small gestures of gratitude, acknowledging a kind act, expressing appreciation for a moment of support, or simply showing that he is noticed, activate his natural instinct to want to do even more. When a man feels like a hero in the presence of a woman, he is inspired to improve himself, to become an even better version of who he is. But here is where many women make a crucial mistake. They tend to go to one extreme or the other. Some become excessively distant, inaccessible, and too mysterious, creating a cold seduction game where the man may feel intrigued at first, but eventually grows tired of the lack of reciprocity. Others, on the contrary, give everything too soon. They sacrifice their individuality, chase his attention relentlessly, and unknowingly become predictable, too easy to take for granted. The secret does not lie at either extreme, but in the balance between maintaining curiosity and, at the same time, making him feel respected and valued. A man will only risk everything for a woman who keeps his heart engaged in two ways: through the thrill of the chase and emotional fulfillment. He needs to feel challenged by her, to sense that there is always something new to discover in her, but also to know that his presence is appreciated. This balance is powerful because it awakens in him both the desire for conquest and the need for connection. He will seek her company not out of obligation, but because by her side he feels stronger, more complete, more alive. This kind of attraction cannot be forced. It happens naturally when a woman maintains her independence and value without demanding attention or devotion. The true power of a woman in a relationship does not lie in the amount of love she gives, in how much she sacrifices, or in how hard she tries to prove she deserves to be chosen. The real power lies in her ability to walk away when she is not being valued. Men instinctively respect what they fear losing. When a woman knows her worth and is willing to leave a situation where she is not appreciated, it triggers a deep psychological reaction in a man. Suddenly, He realizes that she is not like the others. She is not someone who accepts being placed on the back burner, who tolerates neglect, or who settles for crumbs. At that moment, he faces a choice: to rise to the occasion and give her what she truly deserves, or to lose her forever. The male mind is naturally competitive, driven by the need to conquer and preserve what it perceives as valuable. If a woman shows that she will not accept inconsistency, lack of effort, or disrespect, she becomes a rare and precious prize in his eyes. When she makes it clear that she is not afraid to be alone, that she will not lower her standards just to keep a man around, she distinguishes herself from all the others. Confidence is magnetic. It separates the woman who knows her worth from the one who begs for love, who surrenders her dignity in the hope of holding on to someone who, deep down, is not truly willing to commit. A man may care for a woman, but if he feels that she will always be there no matter how he treats her, he may not feel the urgency to give his best. He may postpone commitments, believe there is always time, and take her kindness for granted. But when a woman clearly establishes that she will not wait forever, that she expects consistent effort and genuine love, his perspective shifts completely. In that instant, he understands that to be with her, he must be more than just someone who is present. He must be a man who genuinely deserves her presence. The true power of a woman does not lie in her ability to convince a man to love her, but in her willingness to leave when she is not valued. This is the moment when the male psyche is forced to confront an undeniable truth. She has options, she is valuable, and losing her is a real possibility. Jung spoke of the process of individuation as the key to self-actualization, and this principle also applies to relationships. A woman who knows who she is, who does not mold herself to fit a man's expectations, but instead maintains her own essence, automatically becomes someone he cannot ignore. She does not make threats, does not play games, and does not issue empty ultimatums. Her actions speak for her. If a man truly wants her, he will rise to meet the standard of the woman she is. If he is incapable, it is not her responsibility to convince him. This mindset is not coldness, nor is it manipulation. It is self-love. And self-love is one of the deepest psychological triggers in the male mind. Men are not attracted to women they can control, but rather to those they need to conquer. A man will risk everything for a woman who makes it clear that she is not afraid to lose him if he is not willing to give his best. Not because she is playing a game, but because, deep down, she truly values herself. And here lies the paradox. The moment a man realizes that a woman is willing to walk away is exactly when he will do everything in his power to ensure that never happens. In the strongest and most lasting relationships, both partners feel valued, inspired, and challenged to be better. There are no desperate chases or power struggles, only a mutual understanding that being together is a conscious choice, not a necessity born from fear or insecurity. By nature, men will risk everything for a woman who challenges them without disrespect, who keeps desire alive through mystery and appreciation. But above all, a woman who knows her own worth. The secret has never been to change who you are to fit a man's expectations. The real secret is becoming the kind of woman who naturally inspires respect, admiration, and commitment. Jung once said that what we project into the world is reflected back at us. If a man does not give his all for a woman who begs, sacrifices excessively, and seeks constant validation, he will certainly do so for the woman who challenges him to grow, to become stronger, and to show up as his best self. He will risk everything for the woman who maintains her identity without losing herself in the relationship, who remains an irreplaceable force in his life because she knows that if he does not rise to meet her standards, she has the strength to simply move forward. And that perception alone makes you invaluable. If there is one thing you should take from this, let it be this. You do not need to chase love. You need to become the woman who effortlessly inspires respect. When you put yourself first, the right man will reflect that respect back to you. This creates an emotional space where he feels safe to open up in ways he never has before. When you maintain an element of mystery and depth, he will never stop pursuing you. But most importantly, when you understand your own value, The men who fail to see it will naturally fade away, and the one who truly recognizes your essence will do whatever it takes to keep you by his side. You are not here to convince anyone to choose you. You are here to stand in your power, radiate confidence, and allow the right man to step up. The moment you embrace this mindset, you will see a shift, not just in the way men treat you, but in how you see yourself. And that, my friends, is the true foundation of a love that lasts. If this message resonated with you, apply these ideas to your life. Observe the energy you bring to your relationships, the standards you uphold, and the way you allow men to interact with you. The more you value yourself, the more a man will value you in return. And always remember, you are the prize. You deserve to be desired, respected, and deeply loved. But it all begins with the way you see yourself. Until next time, stay strong, stay confident, and never settle for less than what you truly deserve in love.
Listen to this. You can read every book, watch all the videos, and repeat to yourself 1,000 times that you love yourself. But if you don't understand this one thing, the love you seek will always remain out of reach. Today, I'm not here to give you theory. I'm here to give you the key, something no one has ever told you before, a truth that Carl Jung discovered and that will forever change the way you relate to yourself and others. Are you ready to uncover it? If you're watching this, it's because something inside you already knows there's more. This isn't just about accepting your shadow or balancing your energies. It's about taking those concepts and applying them in a way that transforms your life. And by the end of this video, you won't just have a deeper understanding of why you've struggled to feel loved. You'll walk away with a clear and practical strategy to revolutionize your relationship with yourself and, as a result, with others. This isn't about theory. It's about action. Your relationships are not random. What attracts you or repels you in others is a direct reflection of what remains unresolved within you. Think about the last person who made you feel something intense, whether it was love or frustration. That person is more than just a passing figure in your life. They are a mirror, revealing something deeply buried within you. Perhaps you find yourself drawn to people who make you feel insecure, or maybe you constantly feel frustrated by those who exhibit traits that you reject in yourself. Today, you're going to learn how to use that mirror to uncover the parts of yourself that are crying out for attention and healing. Because until you do, you will continue searching for love in all the wrong places. The real question isn't, why does this person behave this way? The real question is, what is this person showing me about myself? This concept, the relational mirror, is far deeper than it appears at first glance. When someone triggers a strong emotional reaction in you, you're experiencing a projection of your own shadow. Look at the patterns in your relationships. Do you find yourself repeatedly drawn to people with similar characteristics? Or do you find yourself constantly avoiding certain types of people? Both reactions are equally revealing. Attraction and repulsion are two sides of the same coin. They both indicate something crucial about your inner world. When you feel deeply drawn to someone, ask yourself, what qualities do I admire in this person? Could it be that these are qualities I haven't fully developed or expressed in myself? Perhaps you admire someone's freedom and spontaneity because you have lived a life that feels too structured and controlled. Similarly, when someone irritates you intensely, ask yourself, what exactly bothers me about this person? Could it be that I possess that same trait, but have denied or repressed it in myself? Maybe arrogance in others triggers you because deep down, you struggle with your own superiority complex. one that you are ashamed to acknowledge. This kind of self-awareness is transformative, but it requires brutal honesty. You must be willing to see the parts of yourself that you've kept hidden, even from yourself. And it's in this recognition that true healing begins. The most difficult relationships in your life are often your greatest teachers. That person who constantly irritates you. They might just be the key to unlocking parts of yourself that need attention. It's no coincidence that certain people appear in your life. They are karmic messengers, showing you the way to your own integration. Remember, just as others reflect parts of you, you also act as a mirror for them. When you understand this, you develop both compassion and responsibility in your interactions. You begin to see that when someone reacts negatively toward you, they aren't necessarily responding to you. They are responding to the reflection of themselves that they see in you. Instead of reacting defensively, you can respond with understanding. The purpose of this work isn't just to identify patterns, it's to transform them. Once you recognize what part of yourself is being reflected in a difficult relationship, you can begin to heal that part. And as you consciously integrate those rejected or underdeveloped aspects of yourself, your relationships will start to change, naturally and effortlessly. This process of integration doesn't happen overnight. Don't expect immediate results. Observe your emotional reactions as if you were a scientist studying a fascinating subject, without judgment, only with genuine curiosity. Over time, you'll notice that the people who once triggered intense reactions in you will no longer have the same power over your emotions. The healthier and more balanced relationships you seek will begin to appear. Instead of attracting people who reflect your wounds, you'll start attracting those who reflect the healed, whole version of yourself. You'll no longer seek in others what you lack within yourself. Instead, you'll create connections based on shared wholeness rather than emotional dependency. True love is only possible after this journey of self-discovery. When you love from a place of wholeness rather than lack, your relationships become spaces for mutual growth rather than sources of emotional neediness. You no longer need someone else to fill your emptiness. You are complete within yourself. And here's the ultimate truth. The part of yourself that you reject is the same part that is sabotaging your relationships. You cannot fully love if you do not accept all of who you are. Think about the things you don't like about yourself, the things you try to hide. That is your shadow. And until you integrate it, you will continue projecting your insecurities onto others. For example, if arrogance in others bothers you, it's likely that a part of you fears being perceived as arrogant. Or if you're drawn to people who make you feel small, it's because deep down, a part of you doesn't feel big enough. Here, you will discover how to integrate your shadow, not to become perfect, but to become whole. Because only when you accept everything that you are, can you love and be loved authentically. Your shadow isn't just the negative aspects of yourself. It also includes your unrecognized gifts and talents. When you reject parts of yourself, you fragment your being, creating an invisible barrier that prevents the deep connection you long for. But when you embrace all that you are, you stop seeking love as something external. You become love. And from that place, true connection becomes inevitable. This fragmentation leads us to seek in others what we cannot accept in ourselves. Every time you harshly judge someone, you are facing a mirror. That quality that irritates you so much in another person is merely a reflection of something within you that remains unacknowledged. Pay close attention to your most intense reactions. Within them, you will find the most valuable clues about yourself. Perhaps you despise vulnerability in others because you fear your own fragility, or maybe you criticize excessive ambition because you have not allowed yourself to recognize your own desires for success and recognition. Your shadow also manifests in your romantic attractions. We are drawn to people who freely express what we have repressed. If you feel irresistibly attracted to dominant personalities, ask yourself, is there a part of me that longs to express more power and authority? If you constantly seek partners who need to be rescued, you may be projecting your own need for care and attention. Relationship sabotage occurs subtly but persistently. Perhaps you fear abandonment, so you push people away before they have the chance to leave you. Or maybe you fear being controlled, so you resist any suggestion from your partner, even when it is reasonable. These patterns are not random. They are defense mechanisms of your unintegrated shadow. Integrating your shadow requires courage. The first step is to be willing to see it without self-judgment. Whenever you feel an intense aversion to something in another person, ask yourself, where does this exist within me? Not to blame yourself, but to know yourself more deeply. Integration also involves expressing repressed aspects of yourself in safe environments. If you have suppressed your creativity, find spaces where you can freely express it. If you have denied your need for connection, allow yourself to be vulnerable with trusted people. Over time, these rejected parts will transform from hidden saboteurs into sources of strength. A powerful exercise is to write a letter to your shadow. Acknowledge its existence, express gratitude for its attempts to protect you, and share your intention to integrate it with compassion. This internal dialogue can be the beginning of a profound reconciliation with yourself. The beautiful paradox is that by accepting your darkest aspects, you become more luminous. By embracing your imperfections, you become more authentic. And it is this authenticity that opens the doors to genuine connections. The deepest and most fulfilling relationships emerge when two people show up whole, with both light and shadow integrated. You no longer need a partner to complete what you lack. You come as a complete being. You no longer project your fears and insecurities onto others because you have embraced them as part of yourself. Relationships are not just about feeling good. They are about growth. Every conflict, every action, every disappointment is an opportunity to understand yourself better. In this session, you will learn to see love not as an end, but as a journey of self-discovery. Until you understand this, you will continue to repeat the same mistakes. For example, if you always end up in relationships where you feel abandoned, it is because there is an abandonment wound that you need to heal. If you constantly seek people who make you feel secure, it is because there is a part of you that does not feel safe. Here, you will discover how to use love as a tool for growth, not as a goal that frustrates you. When we view love only as a source of pleasure and comfort, we lose its deeper transformative power. Relationships are life's most intense classroom, the clearest mirror of our inner world. Every person who enters your life comes with a specific lesson, and until you learn that lesson, the pattern will repeat itself. The faces may change, but the essence remains the same. Relational patterns are not accidents. If you examine your romantic history, you will find recurring themes that connect seemingly different experiences. Perhaps you always end up with emotionally distant people, or maybe you consistently attract those who need to be saved. These patterns are invitations for self-reflection, signals pointing to internal wounds that need to be acknowledged. Attachment theory teaches us that our earliest bonds shape patterns that repeat in adulthood. If, as a child, you learned that love is inconsistent, you will unconsciously seek inconsistency in your adult relationships because it feels familiar, even if painful. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward transforming them. The true purpose of romantic love is not to make you happy, though happiness can be a beautiful side effect. Its purpose is to reveal aspects of yourself that would otherwise remain hidden. It is in intimacy that your deepest fears, defense mechanisms, and unexpressed desires come to light. Love is not just about finding the right person. It is about becoming the person who can love deeply, fearlessly, and consciously. When conflict arises in your relationship, the most valuable question is not who is right, but rather, what is this situation teaching me about myself? Perhaps your disproportionate irritation over a simple comment reveals a deep-seated insecurity. Maybe your constant need for control is actually masking a deep fear of abandonment. These insights, while often uncomfortable, are treasures for those seeking personal growth. Attractions, too, serve as powerful teachers. They draw you toward aspects of yourself that you have yet to fully integrate. If you deeply admire someone's sense of freedom, it may be because you long for greater freedom in your own life. If you find yourself captivated by another person's creativity, it could be a sign that there is an artist within you, waiting to be expressed. Your most intense attractions are not random. They are maps guiding you toward unrealized aspects of your own potential. Heartbreak, while painful, presents an extraordinary opportunity for growth. When a relationship ends, you have two choices. You can blame the other person and continue repeating the same patterns, or you can turn inward and ask yourself, what can I learn from this? The difference between these two responses determines whether you become bitter or wiser from the experience. Mature love does not seek perfection in a partner. It seeks mutual growth. A relationship rooted in this mindset is not only about individual happiness, but about shared evolution. In this kind of relationship, every challenge is embraced as an opportunity to expand, to break limitations, and to heal together. Paradoxically, when you embrace love as a tool for personal growth, happiness comes more deeply and more sustainably. You no longer depend on perfect circumstances or an ideal partner to feel fulfilled. Instead, you find satisfaction in the process of evolving, of knowing yourself more intimately through the mirror that your partner provides. The shift begins when you stop saying things like, "I always end up with the same kind of partner," and instead start asking, "Why do I keep choosing this kind of partner?" This change in perspective restores your power. You are no longer a victim of fate or the actions of others. You become the conscious creator of your relational experiences. Embracing love as a path to self-growth requires courage. You must be willing to confront uncomfortable truths, to question deeply ingrained beliefs, and to let go of identities that no longer serve you. But the reward is immense. More authentic relationships, deeper self-awareness, and the ability to love from a place of freedom rather than from a place of need. Why do you always find yourself in the same kinds of relationships? The answer lies within your subconscious. The patterns you repeat over and over again are not mere coincidences. They are signals that there is something within you that needs healing. For instance, If you consistently feel drawn to people who make you suffer, it is likely that there is an unresolved emotional wound seeking attention. If you always seek validation from your partners, it may be because a part of you feels unworthy or unseen. Today, you will discover how to identify these patterns and break the cycle so you can create healthier, more conscious connections. Because until you do, you will continue attracting relationships that leave you feeling unfulfilled. Toxic relationship patterns are like invisible cycles that repeat with mathematical precision in your life. You may change partners, but the underlying dynamic remains the same. This phenomenon is not a curse, nor is it bad luck. It is the result of deeply rooted subconscious programming that influences your choices without you even realizing it. These subconscious patterns are often formed in childhood when you first learned what love meant and how relationships worked. If you grew up in an environment where love was conditional upon performance, you may now find yourself constantly seeking approval in your adult relationships. If affection in your past was often accompanied by criticism, you might feel strangely comfortable in relationships where conflict is present. The famous phrase, "What is familiar feels safe," explains why we unconsciously repeat unhealthy relationship patterns. Your brain is wired to seek the known, even when the known is painful. This is why many people leave one toxic relationship only to find themselves in another eerily similar one. The first step in breaking these patterns is developing self-awareness. Observe your relationship history as if you were watching a movie. What themes keep repeating? Do you always end up feeling abandoned? Are you drawn to emotionally unavailable people? Do you tend to lose your sense of identity in relationships? These repetitions are not coincidences. They are clues pointing to specific emotional wounds. Behind every toxic pattern lies a limiting belief. If you constantly attract people who betray you, it is likely that deep inside you hold the belief that you do not deserve loyalty. If you always find yourself in relationships where you feel controlled, you may unconsciously believe that you are not capable of directing your own life. These beliefs act like invisible magnets, drawing experiences that confirm them. Neuroscience teaches us that these patterns are not merely psychological, they are also neurological. Through repetition, you have created strong neural connections. Breaking these circuits requires constant awareness and the deliberate creation of new experiences that contradict your habitual patterns. A powerful exercise is identifying your emotional triggers, those specific situations that elicit disproportionate reactions. Perhaps a simple delay from your partner triggers an intense fear of abandonment, or maybe a casual comment about your appearance activates a deep insecurity. These triggers are windows into your core wounds. Healing begins when you take responsibility for your patterns. This does not mean blaming yourself, but rather acknowledging your role in the creation and maintenance of these cycles. As long as you see yourself as a victim of circumstances or of others, you will remain trapped in repetition. The power to change only arises when you assume responsibility. Breaking patterns requires reconnecting with your body. Relational addictions operate similarly to other addictions. There are somatic signals that precede compulsive behaviors. Learn to recognize how attraction to toxicity feels in your body. There is an intense excitement, a false sense of security, a comforting familiarity. This recognition gives you the opportunity to consciously choose instead of reacting automatically. A fundamental step is setting clear boundaries, both with others and with yourself. If you know you tend to lose your identity in relationships, create rituals that maintain your connection with yourself. If you are drawn to people with narcissistic traits, define clearly what behaviors you will not tolerate. Boundaries are acts of self-love that interrupt patterns of self-sabotage. Real transformation happens when you dare to choose the new, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. If you have always been drawn to drama and intensity, a calm and stable relationship may initially seem boring. This discomfort is normal. You are creating new neural circuits, new ways of experiencing connection. Remember that breaking patterns is not a one-time event, but a continuous process. There will be moments of regression, temptations to return to what is familiar. Each time you recognize the pattern and choose differently, you strengthen your new path. Neuroplasticity is on your side. With each new choice, you literally rewire your brain. The ultimate goal is not relational perfection, but rather the awareness that allows you to choose freely. When you are no longer at the mercy of unconscious programming, you can create relationships that reflect who you are now, not the wounds of your past. You can love, not from lack or compulsion, but from wholeness and freedom. Authentic love is not something you find, it is something you create. When you love yourself unconditionally, love stops being something you seek and becomes something you are. This is the shift that changes everything, because until you understand this, you will keep searching outside for what can only be found within. Love is not something you give or receive. It is something you are. And when you live from that place, your relationships stop being a source of suffering and become an expression of who you are. Because love is not a destination, it is a journey. We have been raised under the premise that love is something external, a force that finds us if we are lucky enough. This romantic narrative, while beautiful, places us in a position of passivity and dependence. We wait to be chosen, to be seen, to be loved. But this perspective reverses the true nature of love. Authentic love emerges from within you like a spring, not as something you must extract from another person. When you depend on external sources to experience love, you create a pattern of perpetual lack. Like a vessel with holes, you will never be able to fill yourself. Love that comes from outside is always temporary, conditional, and limited by another human's capacity. The paradigm shift happens when you recognize that you are the primary source of your love experience. You do not need permission to love yourself. You do not need qualifications or credentials. Self-love is not a reward you earn for being enough. It is your birthright, your natural state. When you remove the barriers you have built against yourself, the practice of unconditional self-love becomes revolutionary in a world that has taught you to value yourself based on your productivity, appearance, or achievements. It means honoring yourself when you fail just as much as when you succeed. It means speaking to yourself with the same compassion you would offer a dear friend. It means recognizing your intrinsic worth, independent of any external validation. As you cultivate this loving relationship with yourself, a transformation occurs in your external relationships. You no longer approach others from a place of need or emptiness, but from wholeness. You no longer seek in others what you lack. Instead, you generously offer what you already have in abundance. The beautiful irony is that when you stop desperately needing love, you become more capable of experiencing it deeply. Your relationships then become spaces of expansion, not completion. You do not seek someone to make you happy. You share the happiness you have already cultivated. You do not expect another to heal your wounds, though you may grow alongside them. You do not depend on someone else to feel valuable, though you celebrate the value they see in you. This shift transforms the very nature of your attractions. When you operate from lack, you attract people who mirror your unhealed wounds. When you operate from wholeness, you attract people who reflect your integrity, who resonate with your frequency of self-love. It is the difference between an attraction based on addiction and an attraction based on affinity. The practice of self-love is not narcissism. In fact, it is its opposite. Narcissism arises from deep insecurity, from an inner void that seeks constant validation. Authentic self-love comes from recognizing and honoring your complete humanity. It allows you to see others with greater clarity and compassion because you no longer project your unmet needs onto them. A transformative exercise is practicing conscious self-compassion. When difficult emotions arise, fear, sadness, anger, shame, instead of judging or suppressing them, embrace them as part of your humanity, not as flaws to be eradicated. This radical acceptance changes your relationship with your internal experience, and by extension, with everything external. Remember, love is not a goal you reach, but a daily practice. There will be days when loving yourself feels more difficult. Days when old voices of self-criticism resurface. Do not be discouraged. Every moment of awareness is an opportunity to choose love again. Every time you reconcile with yourself after a moment of disconnection, you strengthen your capacity for authentic love. The greatest paradox is that when you stop seeking love as something you lack, you discover it has always been there, like a fish, desperately searching for the ocean while swimming in it. You have been immersed in love all along. Your task is not to find it, but to recognize it, to allow it, to express it, first toward yourself, and then, naturally, toward everything around you. This is the secret that mystics and sages have shared throughout the ages. Love is not something you do, it is something you are. And when you live from that truth, every relationship, every encounter, every moment becomes an expression of that loving essence that is your deepest nature. Love is not a prize given for being enough. It is a state that arises when you fully accept yourself, with your light and your shadows. No one will love you as deeply as you can love yourself. And that is the key. When you understand this, love stops being a search and becomes an expression of who you are. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to continue exploring how to transform your life from within, subscribe and activate the notification bell. Remember, love is not something you find. It is something you build, and that journey begins today. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I will see you in the next video. Until next time. You're not here by accident. Something deep within you brought you to this video at this exact moment, and once you finish watching it, you'll understand why. Maybe more than once, you've asked yourself why. Despite giving your best, some people respond with indifference, abuse, or even contempt. You strive to be kind. You go out of your way to help. You treat others with respect. And yet, you keep encountering looks that dismiss your generosity or people who seem to take advantage of it. This isn't random. There's a deeper reason behind it, one rooted in psychology, philosophy, and the way humans interpret kindness. Today, you're going to discover 5 powerful reasons why your kindness sometimes leads others to disrespect you. Let's begin with the first and perhaps most misunderstood truth. Kindness without limits is often seen as weakness. When you're always kind, endlessly understanding, and constantly available to others, many people don't view it as a virtue. Instead, they interpret it as vulnerability. Psychology has a name for this. It's called the benevolence exploitation effect. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychologist, once said that the shadow, the hidden part of the human psyche, feeds on the things we fail to set boundaries around. When you always say yes, when you constantly put others' needs ahead of your own, when you bend over backwards not to upset anyone, a certain type of person begins to see you not as kind, but as easy to manipulate. The problem is deeply ingrained in human nature. There is a subconscious tendency in people to test boundaries, and if you never establish your own, they assume you don't have any. What begins as small favors or innocent requests can quickly spiral into outright exploitation. The people around you start expecting more and more, and giving less and less in return. Eventually, what was once seen as kindness becomes something they believe they're entitled to. This is not about being harsh or turning cold. It's about understanding that kindness without discernment opens the door to being used. It's about realizing that healthy relationships, whether personal, professional, or casual, require mutual respect. And respect is built not only on giving, but also on knowing when to say no. You see, many people aren't even fully aware they're taking advantage of you. They're simply responding to what your actions allow. And if you consistently show that your time, your energy, and even your dignity are available without condition, you inadvertently teach them that those things have no value. That's the hard truth. But there's a beautiful side to it too. Because once you begin to understand this dynamic, you gain the power to change it. You can be kind and strong at the same time. You can help others and protect yourself. You can give and still say no when you need to. And when you start doing that, something amazing happens. People begin to respect you, not just for what you give, but for who you are. This video isn't just about learning why people mistreat kindness. It's about reclaiming your strength, your dignity, and your self-worth. It's about realizing that your kindness is not the problem. The way others react to it is. And the solution lies not in changing who you are, but in standing firmly in your values, your worth, and your boundaries. Keep watching. What you're about to discover might change the way you see yourself and the world around you forever. Reason 2. Kindness awakens the hidden insecurities of others. When you are truly kind, without expecting anything in return, you unknowingly confront people with parts of themselves they often try to avoid. Your kindness acts like a mirror, a silent reflection that shows others what they lack, what they fear, and what they've buried deep inside. It forces them to look inward, to face their own wounds, their emotional limitations, and their inability to give without expecting something back. And the truth is, not everyone is ready for that. Many people have built emotional walls to survive, shaped by experiences of betrayal, abandonment, and pain. They've come to believe that the world is hostile, that nothing is given freely, that every act of kindness hides an agenda. So when they encounter someone who is sincerely kind, someone who gives without manipulation or malice, it disrupts their worldview. It confuses them. Their subconscious sees your behavior as a threat, not because you are dangerous, but because your light exposes their shadows. it makes them uncomfortable. And instead of facing that discomfort and asking themselves why it bothers them so much, they project those feelings outward. They attack, they dismiss, they mock. They might respond with sarcasm, with coldness, with passive aggression, or open rejection. Not because you've done something wrong, but because it's easier for them to discredit you than to confront their own contradictions. This reaction is not always conscious. Often it's automatic, a psychological defense mechanism that kicks in when something or someone challenges the beliefs they've held onto for years. If you can be generous, sincere, and kind without expecting anything in return, then maybe they could too. But instead of embracing that possibility, they label your kindness as naivety, or worse, as weakness. Why? Because it's easier to pretend that your goodness is foolish than to admit that maybe they've armored themselves unnecessarily. It's easier to mock what they don't understand than to admit they might be wrong. Ironically, the people who despise you the most for your kindness are often those who wish, deep down, that they could be like you. But they don't know how. They've spent so long trying to protect themselves from disappointment, from hurt, from vulnerability, that they've forgotten what it's like to give freely. They've buried their softness beneath layers of cynicism, mistrust, and emotional self-preservation. So when your kindness appears, it threatens to unravel everything they've built to feel safe. Their reaction, therefore, isn't really about you. It's about what you awaken in them. When someone disrespects you for being kind, they're not actually seeing you. They're seeing the reflection of their own inner struggle. They are confronted with the uncomfortable truth that they've chosen hardness where softness was possible, that they've lived in suspicion when trust could have existed, that they've closed themselves off when openness might have led to healing. In order to maintain their illusion of control, they twist your intentions. They say you're pretending. They say you're weak. They turn your strength into a flaw so they don't have to ask themselves the hard questions. And this denial can show up in many ways, through mockery, indifference, avoidance, or even aggression. But at the root of it all, what they're truly rejecting is not your kindness itself, but the painful awareness of what they're missing. By laughing at you, they convince themselves that their way of seeing the world is still the right one, that kindness is dangerous, that vulnerability is foolish, that generosity is a trap. They tell themselves that only the hardened survive. But no matter how much they scoff or push you away, the truth remains untouched. Kindness is not weakness. It is strength. It is courage. And it terrifies them. Not because of what it is, but because of what it reveals. Kindness asks nothing in return, but it reveals everything. It exposes the false armor people wear. It challenges their beliefs about what it means to be strong. It invites them to consider another way of living, one based not on fear, but on connection. And while not everyone will accept that invitation, your presence still plants a seed. Even if they reject you now, your kindness has made an impact. It has shown them, even for a brief moment, that there is another way to exist in the world. So don't let their rejection harden you. Don't let their coldness make you question your warmth. Your ability to remain kind in the face of misunderstanding is not only rare, it's transformative. What you do, how you show up, matters more than you think. You are not the problem. Their reaction isn't your burden to carry. You simply remind them of the parts of themselves they're not ready to see. And that is a powerful thing. Reason 3. Your kindness challenges societal expectations. We live in a world where cynicism, competitiveness, and emotional detachment are often considered strengths, while compassion, vulnerability, and kindness are dismissed as signs of weakness. Society has unconsciously created unwritten rules that encourage people to protect themselves, to rise to success even if it means stepping on others, and to avoid showing too much emotion, especially if those emotions reveal weakness or empathy. So, when someone like you chooses kindness over calculation, when you choose to be guided by your heart instead of your ego, you disrupt the entire system. You challenge the norms. You make people uncomfortable, not because what you do is wrong, but because it reveals something deeply rooted in others, the parts of themselves they have silenced or ignored to survive in this system. When you act with genuine kindness, people often don't know how to react. You confuse them. They wonder why you don't play the same game, why you don't seem interested in power, status, or domination. In a world where success is often defined by control and influence, your refusal to participate in that kind of power dynamic is radical. It's revolutionary. It makes you an outlier in a culture that rewards selfishness and punishes weakness. And because of that, your kindness may be met with resistance. Some people will reject it, not because they think you're wrong, but because your presence forces them to confront uncomfortable truths. It illuminates their own emotional walls, their fear of being vulnerable, their reluctance to show weakness or open up. Your way of being reminds them that there is another way, more human, more honest, more compassionate. But it's a way they've spent years avoiding. Facing that reality isn't easy for everyone. You see, you can't control how the world responds to your kindness. That's not in your hands. You can't make people understand you, like you, or even accept you. But what you can do, what you must do, is remain true to who you are. Continue to choose kindness, even when it's misunderstood, even when it's mocked, even when you feel like you're going against the grain, because your kindness is not weakness, it's not naivete, it's not ignorance of how the world works. In fact, it's the opposite. It's the ultimate strength, the calm, grounded, unwavering strength of someone who knows they don't have to harden themselves to survive. Your kindness is a form of courage that many people don't recognize because they've been conditioned to see only aggression as power. But you are powerful, not because you dominate, but because you don't. Your kindness is a silent revolution. It's a mirror that reflects what others are afraid to acknowledge within themselves. When you give freely, when you show love without expecting anything in return. Reason 4. Kindness is often perceived as a vulnerability, an open door that invites exploitation. When you make the conscious choice to be kind, you are not merely performing a social act. You are creating emotional space, revealing a softer, more open part of yourself that many people simply don't know how to handle. In a world that rewards coldness, toughness, competitiveness, and radical independence, being genuinely kind, with no strings attached, no hidden agenda, no demand for reciprocity, can be misread as a sign of weakness. This isn't because you're naive or unaware of how the world works, but because your willingness to give, to care, and to be emotionally present is often filtered through the lens of a society that places value on dominance, control, and self-interest. People who do not understand the language of pure kindness tend to interpret it through their own limitations. They don't see generosity as strength. They see it as something to be used, something to be taken advantage of. What you offer from a place of love, from an open heart, without conditions, can be misunderstood by others as an opportunity, a fertile ground to manipulate, to drain, to consume. What many fail to grasp is that being kind does not mean being boundaryless. It doesn't mean you are incapable of saying no. But the mere act of opening up your emotional space makes others curious, and unfortunately, not everyone approaches that curiosity with respect. Many are not prepared or willing to reciprocate the same level of emotional investment. As a result, your kindness can become a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's a gift. On the other, it can make you a target for those who see giving as an invitation to take as much as they can, without any concern for how it affects you. Over time, this can become exhausting. People begin to expect your support, your time, your energy, as if it's their right to receive it. And when that happens, they stop seeing your kindness as something sacred. Instead, they treat it as something they're entitled to, something automatic, something that doesn't cost you anything. But it does cost you, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. Your willingness to trust others can be weaponized against you. Those who do not comprehend the true depth of kindness might use your generosity as a tool to further their own needs, never once considering the emotional toll it takes on you. And this leads to a slow, internal erosion of your energy. Because while your intentions are pure and rooted in sincerity, the lack of respect from others can leave you feeling used, depleted, and sometimes even betrayed. Kindness, then, becomes a battlefield, a test of strength between your desire to give and your need to protect yourself. It becomes a quiet, internal struggle where your soul wants to connect, but your mind starts to build walls to keep from being hurt. The hardest part of it all is realizing that your kindness, which you offer so freely and without reservation, isn't always understood in the way you meant it. Some people don't see the bravery behind your actions. They only see an opportunity to take more. While you're offering your time, your energy, your presence with no hidden motive, others interpret it as a signal of weakness. They don't see that it takes courage to be open in a world where most people have armor on. They don't recognize the strength it takes to keep your heart soft when so many choose to harden theirs. And because they can't comprehend that, they misread your kindness as a failure to protect yourself. This misunderstanding becomes dangerous. Those who seek one-sided relationships where they receive and never give are magnetically drawn to kind people. They see your emotional generosity as something they can exploit endlessly, without ever questioning how their actions affect you. And it's a painful truth that often comes with choosing to give without expecting anything in return. The true price of kindness is not measured in how many thank yous you receive, but in how often your time, your energy, and your emotional labor go unnoticed, unappreciated, or worse, disrespected. The real challenge, then, is not whether or not you should be kind. The challenge lies in learning how to protect that kindness, to honor it, to make sure it doesn't become an open wound for others to poke at. Being kind doesn't mean closing yourself off. It means being wise enough to know who deserves access to your emotional world. It means guarding your heart, not locking it away. In choosing the path of kindness, you learn that vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is bravery. It means showing up as you are, without pretense, without armor, without masks, and allowing others to see your true self. But despite your best intentions, people don't always respond to this openness with the respect it deserves. In fact, many see it as an opportunity to take what they want without giving anything back. When you act with kindness, you are giving more than just thoughtful gestures. You're offering your time, your presence, your energy, and sometimes even a piece of your soul. But true kindness, by its nature, asks for nothing in return. That's what makes it pure. That's what makes it real. The paradox, though, is that because it expects nothing, people often believe it costs you nothing. And that's where they're wrong. Here lies the danger. Those who do not understand what it means to build a relationship based on mutual respect and emotional reciprocity will never comprehend the value of what you give. Their lack of understanding becomes a blind spot, and in that blindness, they begin to take without ever thinking about what it costs you to give. And when that happens, when your kindness is met with indifference or entitlement, the emotional exhaustion begins to set in. Even if you never intended to feel used, it starts to creep in, quietly, slowly, until one day you realize that you've been giving from a well that hasn't been replenished in a long time. That's why it's essential to understand your kindness is not an infinite resource. You cannot keep pouring from yourself without limits. You may not notice the cost immediately, but over time, the lack of balance begins to weigh on you. You start to feel like a permanent source of comfort for others, someone people go to when they need something, but never someone they consider giving back to. It's easy to fall into the trap of believing that your kindness should always be available, that it's your duty to be there for everyone. But the truth is, your efforts should never be taken for granted. Your kindness is not a public service. It is a gift, rare, meaningful, and deserving of respect. Some people will assume that if you're nice once, you'll always be available. They think of your emotional generosity as a bottomless pit, a safe space they can return to again and again without ever giving anything back. But what they fail to realize is that even the kindest hearts have limits. You cannot continue to offer what you never receive without that imbalance eventually breaking something inside you. Respect for your kindness must be mutual. Only then can you continue to give without emptying yourself in the process. Don't mistake kindness for helplessness. Being kind doesn't mean you're weak, and it doesn't mean you're willing to accept mistreatment. If you don't protect it, kindness can be seen as fragility. But the reality is, it takes immense inner strength to remain kind in a world that doesn't always appreciate it. The lesson is clear. You don't need to stop being kind. You don't need to change who you are. But you do need to be wise about how you give. You need to recognize the moments when your kindness is no longer being honored. It's not about shutting people out. It's about knowing when to walk away from those who drain you. Kindness is a beautiful gift. But like any precious offering, it must be given under the right circumstances, to the right people, those who truly understand its value. Only then will your kindness become an act of strength, not a sign of vulnerability. Reason number 5. People often mistake your kindness as a sign that you will always be available for them. This misunderstanding can lead them to take advantage of your time, your energy, and sometimes even your emotional capacity. True kindness is frequently accompanied by a selfless nature, a genuine willingness to prioritize the needs of others over your own. And while that may be noble, it can also lead to serious misconceptions. When you consistently show up for others, they may unconsciously begin to assume that you will always be there, regardless of your own responsibilities or emotional state. They begin to expect that no matter how busy or overwhelmed you may be, you will always have a moment to listen, a solution to offer, or a hand to lend. But what they fail to understand is that kindness does not equate to unlimited availability. Being kind does not mean being on call 24/7. As this pattern continues, those who benefit from your kindness start to take your presence for granted. They grow accustomed to your support, assuming that you will always pick up the phone, answer the message, or drop everything to assist them, without considering the weight you might be carrying yourself. This creates an unbalanced dynamic, where your time and emotional energy are constantly being depleted to fulfill the needs of others, while your own needs are quietly pushed aside. This imbalance becomes even more problematic when the people who rely on you fail to reciprocate. When you're going through your own struggles, they may not show the same level of interest or effort to be there for you. Instead, they reappear only when they need something. The relationship becomes transactional, and you are left feeling drained, unseen, and underappreciated. Eventually, this one-sided effort starts to take a toll on your spirit. You begin to feel like you're giving far more than you're receiving. You wonder why no one notices your sacrifices, or why your emotional labor goes unacknowledged. It becomes a cycle of exhaustion and silence. What's worse, without clear boundaries, people will continue to ask for more. More of your time, more of your energy, never stopping to wonder if you're okay, if you're tired, or if you simply need a moment for yourself. Kindness should never be confused with personal sacrifice on a daily basis. You are not obligated to prioritize everyone else above yourself, and doing so is not a badge of honor. It's a road to burnout. If you don't learn to say no, if you don't learn to set healthy boundaries, you run the risk of emptying yourself until there's nothing left to give. And when that happens, it doesn't lead to more appreciation. It leads to resentment and emotional fatigue. Balanced relationships are rooted in mutual respect, where both people are aware of what the other can offer and what they need in return. If you don't communicate your own limitations, people will assume you have none. They will continue to take from your well without realizing that it's running dry. It's important to remember there is absolutely nothing wrong with taking care of yourself first. In fact, it's essential, because only when you are grounded, rested, and emotionally whole can you continue to be a genuine source of light and support for others. Healthy kindness is sustainable. It doesn't leave you empty or resentful. But when your kindness is misinterpreted as infinite access, a harmful cycle begins, one that isn't always fueled by bad intentions, but by social conditioning and unconscious expectations. We live in a society that subtly encourages the belief that kind people are always available, always helpful, always ready to serve. And in this framework, your kindness becomes a resource for others to exploit, without them ever questioning the toll it might be taking on you. This lack of boundaries can manifest in many forms, from people repeatedly dumping their emotional problems on you without ever asking how you are, to assuming you'll always be the one to step in and help solve their crises. Over time, these expectations not only drain you emotionally, but they rob you of your capacity to focus on your own journey. It's not just your time that gets lost, it's your sense of self. When you are constantly being pulled into other people's needs, you start to forget who you are outside of that role. You stop being seen as a whole human being, and instead become the person everyone leans on, the rescuer, the helper, the listener. And in the process, your autonomy slips away. People, often unknowingly, begin to see you only through the lens of what you offer them. They forget, or never consider, that you too are a person with boundaries, dreams, pain, and desires. And here lies the deeper problem. When you don't manage this dynamic, you may start to believe that your worth is tied solely to what you can do for others. This internal narrative tells you that if you ever stop giving, you'll stop being valued, that if you set a boundary, you'll be abandoned. So you continue to overextend, not because you want to, but because you're afraid of what will happen if you stop. You end up trapped in a role where you're no longer free to be yourself. You're constantly performing, constantly showing up, constantly trying to meet expectations that were never yours to carry in the first place. And what's tragic is that the people who don't understand healthy boundaries rarely acknowledge that you, like anyone else, need time to rest, to reflect, to pursue your own passions. The more you neglect your own needs to meet theirs, the more depleted you become, and the less energy you have to nurture what truly matters for your personal growth and fulfillment. Yes, kindness is a beautiful gift, but your ability to give is directly tied to your own well-being. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot support others authentically if you are constantly running on fumes. And if you continue giving without limits, what once felt like an act of love begins to feel like a burden. Over time, this dynamic becomes emotionally harmful. What started as generosity morphs into frustration. You become an emotional dumping ground for others, but you're rarely given the same opportunity to release or be heard. The exhaustion accumulates, and you start to question your own value, not based on who you are, but on what you provide. And that is a dangerous place to be, because the more you give without receiving, the more invisible you feel. You aren't being consumed by a lack of kindness, but by a lack of reciprocity. The people around you may not even realize this is happening, but just because they don't see it doesn't mean it's not real. When people only see you as someone who gives without limits, they might unconsciously begin to use your generosity as a crutch, and the relationship becomes parasitic, not necessarily out of malice, but due to an ignorance of where the lines should be drawn. And often, it's you who failed to draw them, out of fear of seeming unkind. But setting boundaries is not the opposite of kindness. It is the affirmation of your worth. Saying no when needed doesn't make you less generous. It makes your generosity more intentional, more sustainable, more real. True kindness isn't about being endlessly available. It's about giving from a place of strength, not depletion. Your light is not meant to flicker and fade because others keep taking from it. It's meant to shine steadily because you've learned how to protect it. Boundaries are not walls. They are self-respecting guidelines that ensure your kindness remains a gift, not a burden. Learning to manage the tension between kindness and availability is essential to maintaining healthy, balanced relationships. Genuine generosity must be grounded in the awareness that you have the right to set limits. Your kindness is valuable, not because of how much you give, but because of the intention and love behind your giving. Only when you recognize this intrinsic value can you escape the trap of constant sacrifice. Without boundaries, people grow used to your availability. They begin to lean on you in ways that aren't fair. And this dependency doesn't just burden you emotionally, it steals your opportunities for personal growth. It sidelines your goals. It robs you of time you could be using to explore, to rest, to dream. And when your life is constantly shaped by what others expect from you, you lose touch with what you expect from yourself. Eventually, you no longer have the time or space to grow as a person. Relationships without reciprocity or respect become shallow and exhausting. And while your kindness might be what draws people in at first, over time, they stop seeing it as a gift. It becomes a given, something they expect rather than appreciate. That's why it's crucial to understand. Kindness must flow both ways. It is not a one-way street. Healthy connections require mutual respect, and that includes respecting your limits. You have to teach people how to treat you, not by being harsh or distant, but by making it clear that your kindness comes from a place of strength, not weakness. This doesn't mean you stop being kind. It means your kindness includes kindness toward yourself. It means honoring your own needs with the same compassion you offer others. And yes, some people may resist when you begin to set these boundaries. But real respect is born not from endless giving, but from balance, from authenticity, from being seen and valued not just for what you do, but for who you are. So next time your kindness feels like it's being disrespected, remember this. Your kindness is a gift, but it's also your responsibility to protect it. It's not about closing your heart or refusing to help. It's about helping in a way that also honors you. True strength doesn't just lie in giving. It lies in knowing when, how, and to whom you give. It lies in giving without losing yourself. And if this message resonates with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Leave a comment and tell me which part touched you most, or share your own experience. Like if you found it valuable, subscribe for more content like this, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Keep taking care of yourself. Remember, kindness is a powerful force, but so is self-respect. See you next time.